Thank you, everyone. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk about this program in which I've been involved since a year. And it's really an exciting program. And it's a program that has a scope and a breadth which is really quite incredible in contemporary times. The idea behind it is to transform Riyadh in a museum without walls. Riad Art is the largest public arts program being undertaken internationally. The idea of a city that becomes the canvas for creativity. The idea of a city that transforms the way citizens live because they will encounter art and creativity in their daily life. This will also attract tourists and transform the vision of the city. So, Riad Art. The program is comprising more than 1,000 public art installations, and it is conceived across 10 programs. And it is enriched by 2 festivals, of which maybe some of you have had the occasion of visiting or encountering them. And it's spread all around the city, from the center to the periphery, transforming really the way the city is navigated. Riad Art is one of the 4 great projects launched by His Majesty King Salman bin Abdulaziz, an initiative of His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz, Crown Prince, in line with the Kingdom's Vision 2030. The goal is to transform the capital in one of the world's most livable, environmentally friendly, and sustainable city. This city is transforming itself at a rate which is incredible. I'm not based here permanently. I'm here once a month for about 10 days, and every time I come, I'm surprised by the speed and the transformation. For us, old Europeans, this is incredible. Our cities move like tortoises, and often, in order to make a transformation to the urban landscape, it takes years and years, and you don't often see it in your lifetime. The city is growing. It has more than 7 million residents, and many of these are young, educated, talented people. So, Vision 2030, Quality of the Life program, and some of the pillars that are relevant to our project are the social engagement, heritage, culture, and arts. And then we come to Riad Art, 10 programs and 2 festivals. But let's focus a moment. Why Riad Art? Why does the city of Riyadh engage in such a monumental transformation? Why does it make sense for a city that is changing so fast to imagine its future with art all around its structure? Saudi Arabia is in a journey of transformation, and the transformation is geared to create a vibrant society, and this will happen thanks to the thriving economy. The kingdom has the 18th largest economy in the world and the 5th highest GDP per capita. But this is not obvious. Not all countries that have a wealthy economy decide to invest in culture and art. This is something that can really transform the perception of a country. And for me, working in art and having a passion for contemporary art, this makes Riyadh and the kingdom highly appealing. So, the pillars of this program, it's not just the quality of the art, but the idea is to build the Riad Art program around people, places, and the economy. So, people. Riad Art has the goal of bringing inspiration and beauty to all the residents of the city. Different generations, different education, different jobs, but also to visitors. The program is geared to the idea of facilitating and creating an attractive city for international tourists and visitors. How will the city change? It will become more vibrant, livable, and have a completely new cultural landscape. This is done not by cancelling what was here before, but with the consciousness of the heritage of the country to transform the landmarks and build around it, creating contemporary landmarks for the city. And the economy. The economic growth of the country is linked to many activities, but the creative economy is one that should not be forgotten. The creative economy is a broad spectrum of activities in which many young professionals can be engaged. They can be engaged, obviously, by being artists, designers, architects, but the scope of these professions is actually very broad. As we were saying, the idea of Riad Art is, in a way, to have a program which is of great quality, but also in some way easily accessible. The idea is that because it's art that you encounter without having to look for it. You encounter it in your daily life. You encounter it if you're someone working, if you're a family, if you're a tourist, if you're a resident. And in a way, it should have an open attitude to communicating. Contemporary art is often accused of being difficult. I don't think contemporary art is difficult. Contemporary art is the art of our time. All art has been contemporary to someone, but obviously public art has a bit of a different responsibility. Public art is in the city, and it should in some way offer a key of access to the citizens, even if they're not knowledgeable or formed in the fields of contemporary creativity. The creative economy is something very important. It's very important internationally. It's been used by cities to transform neighborhoods, to requalify full cities. It's been used by countries to enter a global map of cultural significance. The phenomena marked the end of the 90s and the 2000s of biennials all around the world that were putting countries on the map. And I'm saying this because the occasion of the Diriyah biennial is really significant. And it's a landmark in the history of Saudi contemporary art. It's something that has not escaped the global attention. And it will really help promote the idea of the talent coming from this region. If we think of creative economy across the world, it would be the 4th largest economy in the world. So it's really something that has to be taken in consideration. And like I was saying, creative economy is also made of restorers, art handlers, shippers, transporters. When we think of art, it's not just the artists. It's a full system that allows a country to build museums, store the art, conserve it, and really create a history for the future through contemporary art. But let's get into the details of Riad Art. So Riad Art is defined in 10 programs plus 2 festivals. And these programs are being developed in parallel through the city. And the programs, and then I'll go deeper in them, but our Urban Art Lab, which is a program which imagines temporary architectural pavilion in the city squares. These pavilions are imagined to allow the interaction between digital art, workshops, to have citizens engage with the art, but also to create spaces where you encounter art and culture, where you can discover more about the program throughout the city. Welcoming Gateways. This is a fascinating program which is inspired by a historic tradition of creating grand gateways to cities in moments of transformation. Everybody will probably be aware that the Arc de Triomphe in Paris this year was completely transformed by the intervention of Christo and Jean-Claude, making it one of the most seen monuments in contemporary in these past years. Urban Flow is geared to promoting the pedestrian navigation of the city, and it invites designers and artists to conceive pedestrian bridges, moments of stopping, features that invite citizens to use the idea of walking through the city. The Riad icon is a challenge. What is an icon of a city? What is an icon in the 21st century? It's not an easy question. It's not a question that we have answered. The program develops, and in the development and in the transformation, the programs themselves change and are debated and questioned. Joyous Gardens is one of the most fascinating projects because it's really quite unheard of on an international level. It's the idea of transforming small local gardens into parks where art is installed, but where especially the features of the garden are made by artists and designers. So benches, slides, roundabout games, the idea that inserting beauty in this landscape can make a difference. Art on the Move. Art on the Move is one of the programs that is progressing faster, on which we are more active. It obviously starts from the tradition of the roundabout art, which in Jeddah has a history and is spread all through the world. And the idea is that these landmarks at the roundabouts are an occasion to encounter art, but also a way of help navigating the city. The Hidden River Trail, it's the implementation of art, parks installing on through the wadis and across the rivers. The Jewels of Riyadh is one of the core programs which is happening faster than the others, and it's about acquiring public artworks, important installations to be installed in the, as urban landmarks. It's a way of creating an outdoor historical museum of public art. Art in Transit is an incredible project that sees art installed in the metro and the bus stations. And while many cities have art in their subway, it's very rare that this is thought of in the moment of the building of the subway. Usually this happens through 20 years slowly by transforming the subway stops. But this is really with the texture of the city. Garden City, transforming the central green area of the city into an outdoor museum. And then we come to the two festivals. Well, the Noor Festival, many of you who are here had the occasion to see the festival a year ago, and it was really quite incredible. It's a light and art contemporary festival. Sadly, a lot of international travelers, due to travel restrictions, couldn't really make it to Saudi at the time, but we are all sure that the second edition will bring global attention and tourism. And To Wake Sculpture, which is a program very peculiar of the region, it's a sculpture festival dedicated to live sculpting, in this occasion marble, and these sculptures become patrimony of the city of Riyadh. But this is the master plan. The master plan obviously is something that changes, because as we've been saying, the city changes so much that one of the biggest challenges is in this fast transformation where everybody is active. Green Riyadh is changing the city. Museums are opening. The streets are being transformed. Obviously, there has to be a level of coordination and discussion so that the master plan is continuously rethought and rediscussed according to what's being changed. But let's go a little bit deeper into the single projects. Urban Art Lab. The photo that you see is the Serpentine Pavilion. The Serpentine Pavilion has been a successful way for a very small museum with a very good reputation to enlarge its space in the summer. The pavilion is really something that happens in the park in London every year by a famous architect or design studio, and becomes a place of aggregation where people go to have a coffee, to talk about culture, and it's occasionally created events, and it often hosts a cultural marathon, which is 24 hours discussions on art. And so why urban pavilions in the city? Well, first, it's a good occasion to have temporary architecture, which can really bring experimental models of architecture. It allows for fast pavilions being built and moved in the city. And in these pavilions, it's easy to have a daily interaction with culture, to enact projects of community engagement, educational projects, and also to have talks and performances and video projections and digital art. These spaces are thought of as really places that in the city will become hubs of culture. And the pavilions will have a distinctive architectural form, but will also be designed and thought with an attention to sustainability and the more high-end innovations in building. And this really allows for these spaces to be open to citizens, and the idea is that they'll be installed in places of high passage and traffic, so that citizens don't have to look for the pavilions, but in some way will encounter them in their daily life. And the pavilions will be moved, and then there'll be new ones, and the idea is that by moving through the city, they'll be able to reach new audiences, because the city is actually changing and very large. The second project we'll talk about, like we said, is Joyous Gardens. Joyous Gardens, as we said, will transform small and medium parks throughout the city in spaces of creativity. The idea is that if families and children encounter art in their daily life, it's much easier for them to then have a desire to understand more about art, to go to museums, to study. Because once art is in your daily life, you have an attitude to be reactive to it instead of critical. And it's really thought as spaces of being outdoors, and one of the advantages is obviously it wants to push citizens to be more outdoors and live in public space as spaces where you can encounter and meet other people. So these pavilions will engage local communities and will have this transversal social attitude. They'll be easy to access for citizens in their own neighborhoods. And they will have an important impact on quality of life and well-being. They will inspire future generations. This is something that is transversal to the program, and I think to all the cultural activities in the kingdom. Encountering contemporary art makes citizens more critical, allows people to learn transversal thinking, and can really give you tools which are helpful in making you successful in very different fields. And obviously it will make the city a friendly place for children and family. And the idea of going to the park will not just be an idea of being outdoors, but an idea of encountering culture. Jewels of Riyadh. Jewels of Riyadh, in a way, is the more traditional public art project. Cities all around the world, and this is a photo of New York with a beautiful Calder, have had art in the squares. This is the contemporary version of 19th century monuments, with the idea that while before the monuments were built with the idea of just celebrating like a military or someone who had transformed the contemporary history, now they're monuments that talk of many things. They talk of the city, they talk of philosophical issues, they talk of games, and they talk of energy, and they talk of different things. But the idea of having international artists have monuments through the city creates also a benchmark and the occasion for art lovers, art students to see great masterpieces of contemporary art without having to travel or go to the museums. These monuments become usually friends of the people who use an environment, and often they give nicknames to the squares in which they're built, and citizens create kind of a personal relationship with these monuments. And obviously, this type of intervention is geared also to an international audience. It helps insert Riyadh on an international map, on a map of art lovers, like the Diriyah Biennial and the museums that will be opening. Welcoming gateways. The one you see is a pavilion by Olafur Eliasson. The idea, like we said, is to have artists and architects working together. And I'll just say something, that the images you're seeing are not the images of what we are doing. They're images of inspiration. But they really help imagine what the program is going to be. And the idea of having important architects work with artists to make these landmark gates to the city is really the idea of a contemporary model of the gateway. And what do these gateways do? They mark the entrance to the city. They refer to a tradition of a gated city where the idea of protection was linked with being inside the walls of the city. And they inspired this idea that Riyadh wants to welcome citizens, but also be a place where to live and flourish. And they also obviously talk about the idea of how, and this is something which is very important, tradition and contemporary views collaborate, because obviously the programs are always geared to have art and culture not land like a spaceship in Riyadh, but to be thought with the ideas linked to a tradition, to a history, to a climate, which is not so easy for some artworks. And really, it's about this mixing of heritage and a contemporary vision. Art on the Move. Art on the Move is probably one of the programs which is more linked to a tradition. Jeddah is really one of the incredible cities in the world that has important public art made by artists in a time where usually cities were having very traditional, unchallenging artists work in public space. And these will be monumental scale installations. They will be thought for site-specific interventions by international and local artists. And this is also something important, and why I believe this two-day workshop is so crucial. The idea is that All Riyadh program will, yes, have international artists, very famous and emerging, but it also has to support the growth of local talent, both very famous and emerging, and really give the occasion to artists working in the region to work on a public and monumental scale. Many times these occasions are really important for the transformation of a career of an artist. And as someone who's worked internationally, I have to say that the richness of the scene and the talent of the artists working is really quite exceptional. And I think the idea of having to be able to work with a public project with important budgets will really help the careers of these artists grow and the projects become more and more sophisticated. Obviously, these landmarks will change the city and will also become instruments to navigate the city. Because for someone like me who is not here all the time, at the beginning, these roundabouts all look very similar. And the idea of having art, which, yes, is something beautiful and interesting, but it also marks the path, gives art a very fascinating responsibility. Here we have art in transit. Like I said, it's about having art in the subway stops of the new 6 metro lines that are being finalized and in the bus stops. This means that the people who use public transport will encounter art in their daily life, but it's also the idea that you are pushing people with the excuse of seeing art to pick public transport. Maybe leaving their cars, and so helping also the sustainability of the city and the quality of life. And really, I mean, this is something that has been tested in many global cities. Having art on the subway is really something that is an important occasion to see culture in your daily commute. Obviously, it's art that has to be fast to see. And this sounds nasty, but it's true that when people are commuting, they're moving. And you don't really want them stopping too long because then they'll block the flow. So the idea is to have challenging and stunning artworks, but that allow for this flux of movement, and in the same to have some feature interventions in the bus stops. Urban flow. Urban flow integrates the idea of public art in a whole city network of pedestrian walkways. The idea is that it's linked also to pedestrian bridges, which are a big theme sometimes of moving through the city of Riyadh, also linked to security. And it also obviously pushes individuals, family, visitors to decide to walk somewhere because it's safe, because it's beautiful, and because you can cross easily without feeling you're in danger. And the idea is that it will also use features linked with a solar energy lighting feature and features of allowing people to rest and use public space in a new way. The Hidden River Art Trail, actually composed in 2 parts. One part is linked to the bridges that usually are used by cars and transverse over the wadi, and these bridges will be illuminated by art interventions by light designers and light artists, and these interventions will transform these bridges into artistic landmarks, but will also allow for in particular, the Wadi Laban Bridge will have a very monumental and important installation given the importance and the visibility of the bridge. And the idea is so that driving these bridges become, in a way, light and light shows, and it's also about promoting technology and innovation, because obviously art through the bridges is very much about the new revolutions in this field. But there's also the wadis and the idea of these very well restructured parks on the wadi that will see public sculpture, and the wadis are really used by local families as places of spending leisure time and aggregation, and the idea of having art in these parks is really instrumental to have citizens and locals encounter art, which is in a way thought to be in public space, in nature, and be encountered in their own space. Garden City. Garden City is about the idea of this, and it's a project that is very much being developed with Green Riyadh, a pulsating green heart in the city where nature and features of culture interact, with the idea that the heart of the city should see quality life, culture, and different features living together. And in this park, there will be public art interventions. What you see is a sculpture by Ugo Rondinone, which was installed in a British park for Frieze, London. But these features in London are usually installed for about 2-3 months, while here the idea is to install some of the works permanently and some of the works instead on a rotating basis so that you can have outdoor exhibitions with public artworks. And in this, I have to say, and this is why it's great to be in this forum, the collaboration with all the stakeholders active in the city, in the region, is paramount, because together the power of transformation is multiplied. It's not an addition. And really the energies can go together to transform the landscape. Riad Icon is the big bet of the project. It's about what is an icon of the city of Riyadh. Usually icons become icons besides themselves after they've been built. Tour Eiffel was built for the as a temporary monument, and now it's kind of one of the most well-known global monuments in the world. And so what is an icon to the city of Riyadh? There's a lot of discussion. We are inviting a panel of an advisory board made of architects, sociologists, urban planners, people who teach at MIT, in order to have a discussion about what the ideas and where we stand in today with the idea of building a landmark, and also concerned with issues of sustainability, of development and transformation. In the same, and I didn't mention it at the beginning, but Riad Art has also a board of experts, which is our expert panel, which are international museum directors and curators who've just come for the first time to Riyadh in December, who are engaged into validating the cultural part of the program, to helping us judge competitions, to advise on artworks, and they are coming from different countries with different backgrounds, and they're really a precious addition to the vision and the transformation of the city. And now we come to the two festivals. These two festivals are by their nature quite different compared to permanent intervention in the city. Permanent interventions are slow in a way to come up. They seem costly, but then in a way they exist on their own terms for 20, 30 years, becoming permanent features of the city. Festivals function in a very different way. They're very fast. They attract a lot of people, but they give Riyadh also the occasion to attract the people interested in arts and culture in the city, to create a scene, and also to kind of start digesting contemporary art and culture. Because at the end, there is an idea of a habit of seeing art and culture, and this biennial has been also very important, where citizens should have many occasions to see contemporary art. And the Noor Festival was born as a light festival, but it became much more than a light festival. It's a light festival which is also focused on the best examples of contemporary art. It sees an exhibition, it seems is a public installation, but also indoor installations that transform the city. The idea is that from 30 it will go to 50 installations through the city, and the last edition, the 2020 edition, achieved 2 world records, and for specifically and a symposium that invites sculptures to work live on marble. It might change to other stones in other years, and the idea is that what does it mean nowadays to make contemporary sculptures? We all know that many international artists actually make art through their fabricators. They don't make art with their hands, but there is something material, and it's quite exciting to see the sculptures being carved. And for the public, it was really a great occasion to be able to visit the site while the artists were doing their finishing touches. And then there's a prize, and the 10 of the artworks get installed and become part of the patrimony of the city. And there's a winner who has a prize to produce new artwork. And I think I'm done. At this point, I will open to your questions. I'll be happy to answer, even if I hope I have the answers, because as I said at the beginning, it's a project which is growing, it's in transformation, and I'm sure many things will be changing super fast to make the project more challenging and more successful.